So welcome everybody to Networking for the New You, a panel discussion for academic women. Our panelists today are Maureen Pisani, a PhD certified hypnotherapist and networking expert, Steve Hyatt, a retired IT specialist, project manager, and headhunter. And this event is hosted by me, Gina Petonito, writing mentor and coach, and founder of Academic Women Reclaim Your Power. So I'm going to switch over to my introductions so that you have a little bit more idea of who our panelists are. Maureen Pisani, PhD, is an international speaker and hypnotherapist and best-selling author. She is the founder of Pro Thrive science-based hypnotherapy, where she works with individuals and groups to help empower them, streamline success, and truly thrive. Maureen Pisani is the poster child for how hypnotherapy can help change your life for the better. After a work injury left her in constant pain and 100% disabled, she found that hypnotherapy offered her relief and a new lease on life. An expert in modalities such as neuro-linguistic programming and the emotional freedom technique, she uses all the tools at her disposal to effect positive change in her clients. A former academic, Maureen relies heavily on networking to help her business thrive. In fact, she won BNI's award for Networker of the Year in 2007. Maureen will focus on how to develop a networking mindset. Steve Hyatt is often seen wearing a Wizards hat. Today, he's wearing his University of Wisconsin's Badgers hat. The Wizards hat is called an accountability Wizards hat, and he focuses on helping entrepreneurs level up their businesses. In his prior life, he wore many hats during his 44 years of IT consulting across government, the military, insurance, and industry. He was a database designer and developer, a project manager, a scrum master, an agile software development coach, instructor, and more. Steve will address the ways networking assisted his job searching and what he learned about networking as an IT headhunter. He will offer practical tips on what to do and what not to do in a networking encounter and in a job interview. And now there's me. I am the host of Networking for the New You. I'm a retired academic turned coach, writing mentor, activist, and entrepreneur. I run a full-service writing business, Writing Your Way, where I help people develop, edit, and polish all kinds of writing, from resumes, academic papers and proposals, common application essays, to serious nonfiction and fiction. I also coach academic women who wish to start a side business or leave academia for greener pastures. I have dedicated myself to supporting as many academic women as I can, and I recently won an award for my career-long service to women. It was called the Jane Addams Award for Service to Women. It was conferred by the Midwest Sociological Society. What I'm going to do is focus on finding your why and how this helps you chart your networking and job searching course, and how informational interviewing can help you fine-tune your path. So I'm going to click out of this, go back to my discussion here, and get started. So first of all, why networking? Well, I recently saw a 2022 survey that showed that 80% of all jobs filled are through networking. Other surveys have had different kinds of numbers, say 60 to 80% of jobs are filled through networking, more than half. Networkers gain access to the hidden job market, and that is when a company has a job that they haven't yet advertised. You could perhaps get the inside track into that position. Networking also puts you in a position to pay it forward. We as academic women, I'm hoping, are developing women's ways of supporting each other. And I hope that if you benefit from networking, you will assist other women get that foot in the door. And networking is fun. Get involved in activities that interest you. Build your network that way. But first, find your why or life's purpose. I read Simon Sinek's book, Find Your Why, about 4 or 5 years ago in a reading group that I participated in with all women. It was the sequel to his book called Start with Why. Since then, Simon Sinek's concept of finding your why has proliferated throughout the business world. What is your why? It's your life's purpose, independent of your job. Your why is your motivator. It leads others towards your vision. That's why he wrote the book, to help business people become leaders. Your why gets you excited to get up in the morning, and your why helps you go beyond yourself and share your gifts. I spent 4 hours with one of my reading group partners going over Simon Sinek's discussion questions and techniques to find my why. And I discovered, I was still an academic at that time, that I reveled in fostering my students' success, that even having a small little part in helping my students succeed was something that motivated me to continue on. Since retiring from academia, I took a business course with business maven Marisa Murgatroyd, and Marisa talks about finding your 3 big whys. Now, the why that I discovered is reveling in my students' success is what Marisa calls your intrinsic why, or what motivates you to emotionally move forward with your business. And when I started my writing business, I created a tagline, "Your success is my success," in order to reflect my intrinsic whys. Okay, so instead of my students' success, my why has formed to fostering my clients' success. But Marisa also talks about your altruistic why. What does my work provide for others? My writing work, I believe that everybody has the ability to make their writing shine and communicate what they want to communicate to the world. And academic women, I believe all of you deserve a career that you love and enjoy and that fulfills you. And my selfish why, what does my work provide for me? Well, work typically provides some sort of income. Being an entrepreneur has allowed me to organize the time on my own and be my own boss. And it's something that's very personally fulfilling, that I don't have to sit in retirement twiddling my thumbs, that I feel as if I am making a difference in the world in some small way. So you don't have to spend 4 hours working with somebody in order to find your why. I have a handout that I've given everybody that's joined Academic Women Reclaim Your Power. You can go back to the handout, or you can come here to the recording and answer these questions. It'll get you started. What do you dream of accomplishing? From where do you get your greatest satisfaction? What tasks give you the most joy? What kind of life do you dream of having? And what does your life of purpose look like? What are you doing, thinking, and feeling in your life of purpose? So let's move on now to networking and the technique called informational interviewing. And this is a step towards finding your why. Informational interviewing has been around forever. I first became aware of it when I graduated with my undergraduate degree in the 1970s in the book, What Color is Your Parachute? One little word of warning. Informational interviewing, the term is not used consistently throughout the business community. So don't be surprised if somebody doesn't know what that word, what that phrase means, but they do understand the concept of meeting somebody who has a job that you are thinking of taking, or you're thinking of making it be your career, to find out more about it. Okay. So informational interviewing's primary aim is to help you see if the job you want aligns with your why. So here's the process. Meet with a person who has a job that you would like to have. Ask journalistic questions. Who has this type of job? What kinds of things do they do? Where do they work? Can you work remotely? Why do people have this type of job? And how do they do this job? Take notes. And it's a good idea to ask permission first before you do that. Actively listen and repeat important points to make sure that you understand. If you have training in qualitative interviewing like I do, this is second nature for you. But if you don't, it might be a good idea to review some books or some articles on qualitative interviewing before you proceed. Informational interviewing do's. Don't go into an interview cold. Be sure to research the company and the person's career. There's so many resources available now online that there's no excuse for you not to do this. Have a 20-second pitch as to why you wish to speak to them, but it might not be a good idea to leave it on voicemail because they may not return your call. So try to have that 20 to 30-second pitch on the phone or on Zoom or in person. And again, if you're a qualitative interviewer, you know that scheduling is always a problem. The qualitative interview is number 1 on your agenda, but probably 5, 6, or 7 on your interviewee's agenda. So be patient. Expect that a couple of these interviews might have to be rescheduled. Just go with the flow. During the interview, try not to let more than 30 minutes pass. You don't want to spend too much of this person's time. After all, they're doing you a favor. And be sure to ask for referrals. In qualitative interviewing parlance, this is called snowballing. You start with one person, you get 2 or 3 referrals, and you snowball out until you have an entire network of new referrals. After the interview, be gracious. Pay for coffee or lunch, or at least offer an offer right away. They may insist that they don't want you to pay, but at least offer. Be sure to send a thank you note. I think email is fine nowadays. And then, again, this is called field notes and qualitative interviewing. Keep meticulous notes that help you keep track of the people you met. Who did you meet? Where did you meet them? What time did you meet them? What are some of the major takeaways? And then this will help you keep track of who you've met and what you've talked about. And follow up on a regular schedule. Now, you don't want to bother them. Maybe 2 or 3 months is fine. But if you do get a job, be sure to let them know. They'll be thrilled. Informational interviewing don'ts. Don't ask for a job. They know you want a job. But if you ask for a job on an informational interview, you may run the risk of them thinking that you tricked them into an informational interview just to press them for a job. You don't want that type of reputation. Remember, an informational interview is just for information. However, they may ask for a resume, or if it's appropriate for your job, they may ask for a portfolio. So be sure to have it with you just in case. Be prepared. Okay, jobs may come organically after. Be patient and stick with your plan. Finally, how to find a person to informational interview. I know people that have found jobs just by working LinkedIn. LinkedIn is an excellent resource. Be sure to have an active profile and try to aim for about 500 contacts. Do not overlook your alumni networks, either your undergraduate or graduate alumni networks. Oftentimes they'll have meet and greets, they'll have networking events. Nowadays they have Zoom events. So definitely look into them and see what kind of resources they offer. Friends in existing networks. Definitely tap into the people that you know to see if they can help you find a person to informational interview. What I do with my clients is that I look through my network And I try to get them 1 or 2 people to start with through my networks of people. Professional associations, especially associations in the job that you want, maybe one of the officers of that association would be very happy to talk to you. And if you want to get a local job, consider joining your local chamber of commerce. This might be an excellent resource for you for networks. So that's all I have to say. I'm going to turn the talk over to Maureen. Take it away.
Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. So let's see here. There we go. So hi, everybody. I'm Maureen Pisani. And yes, you hear an accent. I'm originally from the island of Malta. So after this, go zoom, check it out and zoom in. It's tiny. It's 9 by 17 miles. So as Gina mentioned, I'm a hypnotherapist, which means I sell ether, which means my business that I've been doing now in June, it'll be 17 years, is 99% referrals and networking, because people have to know who I am and what I offer. So what I'm going to share with you is tried and true. I do it on a regular basis, regardless of Zoom or in person, regardless if I'm in LA, San Diego, or Santa Fe. I've had practices in all 3. It's something that works. So the very first thing I want you to remember, you can do this. You all have skills that the people in the outside world wish they had. You're only feeling that there's a lack of what you have to fit into the outside world. But the irony is you have so much more than that's necessary, because you already did all the hard work. So the only issue here is getting over the hump of dealing with the outside world, because you haven't dealt with it before. That's it. So if you come from that perspective, if you come from that mindset that, yes, I can do it. It's just, okay, think about it this way. If you are a chef and you specialize in Mexican food, and now all of a sudden you're being given a brilliant opportunity, lucrative contract to cook Chinese food. It'll be a little weird because, you're used to Mexican food, but you're still a chef. You still have the skills. You just have to adapt. So if you keep that in mind, that's your secret X factor. You will succeed every time. You will land on your feet and you will surprise yourself with how resilient you actually are. So let's start. The first thing I want you to know is basically BNI's structure, skeleton, givers gain. Always start by giving something to the person you're talking to or connecting with, because the first thing they want to do after is what? Help you back. So if you show up with, so how can I help you? How can I help your company? Who is the ideal client that you're looking for? If you focus on them, they're going to love the fact that you're paying attention to them. They're going to love the fact that you're interested in helping them. But the natural reciprocity is now, how can I help you? So that's one of the easiest way to start. What you should also do is come up with, and I'm going to give you a lot of pointers, and I'm glad this is being recorded because I'm going to make sure you have it. When people ask you, what do you do? If we go into the old description of what you've been used to sharing, that's completely inapplicable to what you want to achieve. So I want you to come up with very specific sentences and basically speak in terms of how what you do benefits the people you want to help. So not, I used to be a professor, or used to be this, or this is what I taught, but what all those tools, how are they going to be transformed into results for your clients? The other thing also is be flexible in your thinking and in your approach. So there's a career called GIS, and it's a lot of computer work with, I see that's nothing good. So, it's maps, it's details, it's a lot of code, computer code. And usually people think of GIS as cartography. But GIS is used, ironically, in sanitation, in voting, in mailboxes, in police. So just because you have a degree in GIS doesn't mean you're only doing maps. So I want you to start thinking outside the box. What is the tool, the skill set that I have? How can I apply it into all the different aspects? And then you start seeing results. There's a sentence I want you to remember. The person or the organization with the most flexibility has the most successful outcomes. If you've been pounding your head against a brick wall because 4 + 4 makes 8 and only 4 + 4 makes 8, you might find tremendous success that, guess what, 6 + 2 makes 8 too. And what, surprise, surprise, if 10 - 2 makes 8? Might have been a thing you never thought of. So come from that flexibility. There's also something called the best career equation. And this is going to help you finesse exactly what you're going to be doing. Because yes, Gina's absolutely right. Do what you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. So the equation is this. Number one, what is it that you're passionate about? Plus, what are you talented in? Plus, the organization, sorry, the organization you want to be aligned with, plus faith, plus action. You can have everything, but if you don't take action, nothing's going to happen. If you're ever stuck because of action, come from the thought that if you're hungry, looking at a menu doesn't satisfy your hunger. You actually need to eat food. So action is essential. So when you look at those points, what are you passionate about? Very, very first question you ask, would I do this for free? Not that you have to, but if your heart is willing to do it for free, then you're really loving what you do. What are you talented in? What comes naturally to you? Don't look for something that's an uphill battle every single day. Look for something that's within your capabilities that is a joy to do. The organization is key. You want to know their values, you want to know their mission statement, you want to know their vision statement, you want to know if their values are in alignment with yours. Because if they're unethical and you're ethical, then you have a problem. But this way, do it and play with it. What if you were this or what if you were that? How would it be for you? The other thing also is get a catchy name, just like Gina mentioned the tagline. When you're meeting people, they're meeting so many others. All they have is an alphabet soup of names. So do something that will be memorable. Like in the beginning, a hypnotherapist. Whenever I say I'm a hypnotherapist, people go to two things, smoking cessation and weight loss. I do so much more than just those two. So I had to come up with something, right? So in the beginning, years ago, my tagline was, if you want your future to be a dream, call Maureen. And I picked, right? People were like, ah, gotcha. And then there was a dentist who had, I'll give you the whole tooth and nothing but the tooth. So this way you get that, you say something that sticks in their mind. Oh yeah, she's the one with the purple hair, unforgettable. So this way you do something that in their mind, A + B = I can refer her. The other thing also is, you can also introduce yourself. Like I had a friend of mine who was a human connector. Now, because it's weird, because what? It catches. So come up with something that's going to make them keep you in the forefront of their mind. And again, if anybody asks, what results? Always positive. I don't say, I help you get rid of depression, because the last word you hear is depression. But I help you increase confidence. I help you build up motivation. I help you get results. So it's always the positive that we're highlighting. Imagine if you're reading a book, which words are bolded and underlined, because that's what's going to stick in their mind. The other thing is, you need to have a prepared and rehearsed. You don't want to be like, well, I'm Maureen Pisani and oh yeah, I help people. Because they'll be like, are you sure? Rehearsed and prepared, so you know it's fluent. But you want to have these points. Your name and your title. I'm Maureen Pisani, a certified hypnotherapist, PhD in clinical hypnotherapy. So instantly they know what level I'm at. Because, you know, in the outside world, unfortunately, we have a lot of dilettantes. So to differentiate yourself by quality, because of course, nobody wants to work with a dilettante, they want to have the best, right? So instantly highlight who you are and make sure your soapbox is solid. 2, location of your office. So if you're looking to have, like in my case, I would say, I'm currently located in Santa Fe, but my practice is global online. So if you're looking to work with attorneys, what are they licensed in? Which states are they licensed? What licenses do you have, and which states or counties are they valid in? Where can you apply your skill, and is it limited? Is it limited to a state? Is it limited to a country? Is it global? Tell us so we know. The other thing is, what results does your service offer? Just when Gina read the introduction, she told you that I help empower people. So you might not know exactly what hypnotherapy is or how I apply it as a hypnotherapist, but you know that I offer results. So how do you introduce yourself? And who are you looking for? Because you're showing up with, I have a tremendous skill set behind my back, and I'm looking for, and remember, anybody and someone, anyone and someone will get you no one. Your mind does not do vague. If I say, and I've heard this countless times, and you probably heard it too, when people are selling, skin supply, like cleansers and moisturizers, and people say, who do you need? Anybody with skin. That means nothing. But if I say, let's pretend I'm an herbal consultant, and I say, I'm looking for teenagers with acne, bam, your mind is thinking of them. I'm looking for ladies who want to prevent the wrinkles. People who are very aware that they go and twist themselves into pretzel not to have wrinkles. I'm looking for very blonde people who get sunburned to a crisp as soon as they go out. Bam, you got it. But if I say anybody with skin, it'll be like, I don't know. The other thing also is, if you're looking at a company and you know that if you met John Smith, the CEO of company ABC, it would be the best introduction possible, ask for it. I was at a networking event, and I'm not joking, I witnessed this. And a man opposite, on the other side of the table opposite me, stood up and said, I'm looking for, and he gave the name. And he said, this is the owner of this company. And if I could meet him, it would blow my company out of the water. And he sat down because he thought he was just, tossing the dice. And the guy next to me stood up and said, when do you want to meet him? He's my next door neighbor. I witnessed that. So when you have names of specific people who would open the rest of your future to you, ask, because you never know who knows. The other thing also that I want to introduce you is called the wedding mafia. So think about it. In a wedding, we have the caterer, the photographer, the florist, the bridal, the event planner. They're all working together with the same client, right? So if you have 5 people, and let's say Jane meets the photographer is going to introduce her to the other 4, because this way they all get a job. But then if the florist gets Patricia, but then the florist is going to introduce the other 4, so they all get to work with Patricia as well. So when you decide on what it is that you want to do in the outside world, think of all the subsequent ripple effects, because you might not meet John Smith, who you really want to meet, but you might meet somebody who works with on a regular basis. And then the introduction happens, which brings me to my last point with 2 minutes left. We all talk about warm market, and we all talk about how weird it is if I had to call somebody I never knew, and I say, Mr. I have no idea, Mr. Taylor, I'm Maureen Pisani, and I really want to work with your company. And he's thinking, who the heck is Maureen Pisani? So with LinkedIn, find out if you have any common names between you and Mr. Taylor. If you have somebody who's a common mutual connection, then call them your friends and tell them, hey, do me a favor. Can you call Mr. Taylor and introduce me? Why? Because if I showed up in Mr. Taylor and say, I'm a hypnotherapist, I'm really good, I wrote 18 books, blah, 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 I'm coming off as one of the snootiest idiots on the planet. But if my friend introduces and goes, hey, Tom, I got a good friend of mine. She's something else. She really works. She's the real deal. By the way, she's written 18 books and has a PhD. Now it's not me bragging. Now it's him telling him that I'm quality. So now when I meet Tom Taylor, he's not cold market. Now he's warm market because he's excited to meet me. And that way is how you actually smooth out the hiccups. Now, just for you guys, you want to find me on Facebook, you want to friend me, you want to find me on LinkedIn, please do. I am here to serve. I am here to assist making it a smoother transition for you. I did, as you can see behind me, write the books, so it's not a lie. And always check, by the way, because there's a lot of people who will brag about something they're about to do, which tells you a lot about who they truly are, right? So come from a space where you are, and I'm pausing this because I don't want it thinking, but come from a space where you got this. I'm not joking. Think about who you've been in the past, all the different versions of who you've been, and think of how you arrived today, because 1% at a time, you evolved. I personally like evolved better than grown, because evolved, the first four letters are love backwards. So you grew with love. So come from a space where you're confident, where you got this, where if you get a no, guess what? It just means that it's not yet, that something better is coming along. So I'm gonna let you go with this. I don't know how many of you have seen the show Outlander, but if you've seen it, you know who Sam Heughan is. Now, Sam Heughan, thanks to Outlander, is set for the rest of his life. Sam Heughan auditioned 7 times for Game of Thrones. So think about it for a moment. He went there, right? Crossing his fingers, I gotta get the job. I'm a nobody, nobody knows me. I wanna really become an actor. And he got 7 no's. But if he had gotten a yes, he would have just been one of the other guys on Game of Thrones. Instead, he had to wait, though he had to experience those 7 no's to get the yes of a lifetime that has now set him up. So come from that perspective. It will happen. And I am here to serve. So find me, ask me any questions, check out my website, prothrivesbh.com, and I will be hanging in the background to answer any of your questions. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you, Maureen. And now we're going to turn to Steve.
All right. Hello, everybody. Could I get just a quick show of hands or a finger wiggle? Who's actively in the job market or looking to make a change? Okay. And then for everybody else, you're considering the possibility or, okay. All right. So there are maybe 3 different perspectives I can share with you guys. The first one would be going way back in time, how I use networking and information interviewing, although I wasn't familiar with that term as that term, to get my first professional job in IT, and that was with Texaco. So I originally got a degree in psychology, spent a year working in a psychiatric hospital, had the epiphany that it really wasn't, at least at the time, what I wanted to be doing. So I went back to school, got, in effect, a minor in computer science, although I took almost enough courses to have a major. And then that put me in a position where I could start interviewing at the job fair. And I was able to prepare for that by calling people that I knew that I'd met in the computer science program, former students who were recently hired into the, let's see, there were 4 different companies that I was especially interested in. I knew were going to be interviewing. And so, you know, that would fall in the area of networking where there are people I knew. And I think one of the points that, from a mindset point of view, I'm comfortable with the term networking. It's a pretty standard definition, but I also like to think of it as connecting. So if you approach it from a mindset of friendly curiosity and interest in people, rather than from the point of view of what can I get out of these people, or I'm going to make a bunch of connections to further my career and my own ends. And that can contribute to it, but I think most people can get a read on you if you're working your agenda very heavily and you really don't give a crap about them per se. So anyway, there were several people that I had a good relationship with that, and I was interested in them enough to keep up with where they all landed. So I called each of them in turn and said, hey, I'm going to be interviewing with, for example, one of the people I'm going to be interviewing with Texaco in like 3 weeks. I know you went to work there 6 months ago. Tell me about it. So I went through the informational process. Do you like it? What's been your experience? What kind of training do they give you? How are things going? Kind of give me the inside scoop here, bud. And I did that for 3 other companies with 3 other people that I had also networked with. So that goes back to, I think, both Gina and Maureen made the point that you really want to prepare. Don't go in cold. So unfortunately, at the time, this is way back, I didn't actually have the internet to do research, but I went to the college library and I researched all 4 of the companies. And when I went into the interview for each of them, I was very up to speed on their organization, their IT shop. I had a lot of details about the company. And as a matter of fact, for the 2 companies I was most interested in, he said, they told me, ordinarily we only interview people who are graduating with a major, and you've got a major in psychology and a minor in marketing and a minor in computer science. But because I was so on top of their particular organization and was able to relate to them the things that I had done, including extracurricular activities like working at the computer lab at night, et cetera, consulting projects I'd done for professors for coding. Anyway, that they said, and we really like you. You're gonna have a second interview. We're gonna fly you out to, in one case in Houston, in the other case it was in Phoenix for a follow-up interview. So that would be just an example of, and something that probably for you folks who are actively looking to make a change, you probably know some people who have gone to work, or some people who know some people who are working at organizations that you think you would be very interested in working in also. So, reach out to them and go through that information interviewing process that Gina laid out for you. So the second area, based on my experience, I can kind of relate to you guys would be when I was a headhunter. I was an IT headhunter for a year. I took about 8 years into my career with Texaco. I went from Houston to New Orleans, was working in their science geophysical group for about a year, and ended up leaving Texaco at least for a while, and I spent a year as a headhunter. And I ended up going back to work for Texaco because I discovered that I was interviewing and getting jobs for people who were doing things that were a lot more interesting than I was doing, because being a headhunter is a lot like being a white-collar factory worker, because you're just doing pretty much the same or something very similar over and over. But from a networking point of view, being a successful headhunter is probably 80% effective networking. It's reaching out, talking to people, staying engaged with especially with the local market, the local hiring folks, and people who are in the industry, and that included people who just graduated. So they would call me up and I could not place somebody that was just a graduate directly because we were fee based, but I would always invest the time and energy to explain to them, here's what you need to do, and give them the information they need to reach out directly and do, pretty much what we just talked about, which is the whole information interviewing. Here's who you probably need to talk to. Here's the approach you need to take. The other thing I can share with you for those folks at the point where you might be ready to, or getting close to the point where you submit a resume, is you need to have a reasonably well written, focused resume. You need to at least hit the key buzzwords in whatever domain you have an interest in. And here's why: because the HR department in most organizations, they're the gatekeepers. And if they get a resume that doesn't fit into the little box in their head of the position they're trying to fill, then that resume isn't even going to go over to the hiring manager. So over the course of my 44-year career, I've interviewed literally hundreds of people, and I always had to work through either HR or, for consulting companies, as a technical recruiter. So with the technical recruiters, I could call them up directly and say, here's what I'm looking for. But it's still their job to go through the resumes and do a first cut. And then I would look at them and go, yeah, it looks good on paper, or this one I'm not sure about, this one a no-go. So it's more important than you might think to have it doesn't have to be like a work of art, but it needs to be good, well written, no typos. I typically recommend, chronological order, and to go back to a point that I think both the other presenters made, especially if you're going from academia to something outside of academia, you need to translate, all your excellent skills and experience, the abilities that you had and that you demonstrated in your successful career in academia, translate that into terms that a business person can better understand. And I, as a IT hiring manager, staffing projects, probably over the course of, I'd say 5 altogether, 5 different PhDs. So honestly, I was never wildly enthusiastic about having a candidate, and this would be computer science PhDs, so maybe that's a different thing, that had a PhD. And here's why. Because one, I had the suspicion that they hadn't made the mental translation. You have to interact with people differently in the business world than potentially you do in academia. But it's great that you have a PhD, but if you have an attitude with that, like, well, dude, I'm the smartest person in the room because I have a PhD, that doesn't fly that well. Now, to be fair, 3 of the people that I ended up hiring that had PhDs, one was in neural networks, one was they were very special, one was in toxicology. They were great, and they'd already made that mental transition. But I had a couple of people that were problem children for me the whole time they were on my project because they hadn't yet made that, they hadn't flipped the switch that, okay, great, you're really smart. There's a lot of other people that are really smart too, okay? And just because they don't have a PhD doesn't mean that they're not very smart and skilled in their particular domain. So the other thing on Headhunter, and then let's see, probably got, how much more time I got, Gina? I want to make sure I leave time for Q&A. You're on mute.
Probably about 3 more minutes.
Okay. So the other thing I want to cover real quick is in the interview process, again, conducted literally hundreds of interviews, hired altogether for probably 40, 50, actually maybe 100 people over the course of my career. So one of the key don'ts is don't show up late. You know, please, whether it's in person or on the phone, it's just, there's really no excuse for it. And usually I would give people like 2 or 3 minutes, and I would just tell the recruiter, you know, we're done, and I'm not interested in whatever their lame ass excuse is, right? The other thing is do the prep work. So, you know, that research, you know, I was always very unimpressed with someone that showed up and didn't have a clue about what either the client did that we're hiring for, like the last project I was on for the CDC was for the CDC, but they also didn't have a clue about the consulting company that was considering hiring them. The other, I'd say, don't fluff your resume, right? So it's one thing to make sure you have a well-written resume, but part of what I was on the call for is to tech people. So, you know, conduct technical questions about, okay, so I see that you spent 3 years as a database administrator for Abbott Labs with Oracle, and then ask some questions. So if it turns out that they were somebody's assistant, or they walked through a room where people were doing DBA work, you know, it's like, you know, it's not going to serve you well, and you have to assume that people are going to figure out sooner rather than later if you really, really fluffed your resume. Okay, so I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for Q&A, so I'll turn it back over to Gina.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Maureen. Those were both really excellent. Now, if anybody has any questions, we're having some conversation in the chat, but any questions, and I'll facilitate the Q&A. So who would like to? Okay, go ahead, Natasha. I think you're muted.
Okay. Right. So thank you to everybody. It's been really gotten some really good information so far. So one question I have is, well, okay, so I'm out in the Bay Area near Silicon Valley. So most likely a lot of the places that I'm going to be looking to apply to, both based on my background as an anthropologist and also because of the most recent program I'm coming out of, are going to be tech companies. And putting aside some of the introductions and connections I have via my program, when I look at jobs with some of the tech companies where they want people who have my background in the social sciences, there is an obvious preference for people who are recent graduates, or it says university graduate, recent graduate. Even one place it says we prefer recent graduates or people with 3+ years of experience, but who don't have the same degree, like a PhD. And whenever I mention this to people, they say, well, it's because they don't want to pay you as much. But I also, it's interesting you were mentioning some of the experiences you had with people who had come from academia and PhDs and kind of had, I guess you could say, a chip on their shoulder or a sense of superiority about things. I guess, and even within my own program that I'm coming from, there are some students who are hired, who are given job offers, and some who are not. Everyone who got a job offer is in their mid-20s and doesn't have the same level of education. It was not as participatory in class. So, I mean, I hardly feel old at my age, but I guess I'm trying to figure out how to best grapple with this tendency I'm seeing, and not to see it as a limitation or something that's a barrier.
Okay, I think it's a question for Steve. Go ahead.
So I guess one of the, maybe an action item, so you mentioned that you know some people that you recently were in school with that have actually been hired, correct? Into some of the companies you're interested in?
Not to the companies I'm interested in, but to the think tank that I was part of
Okay.
as a student. You can kind of see
Right.
where it returns.
So I'm going to turn it over to Maureen just a second. There might be some element of, a little bit of ageism, but I mean, in the cosmic scheme of things, you're very young, right? Okay. I'm 69. So from my perspective, you're way young. And I think you have many years left in your career. So I wouldn't hold that as a limiting belief. There may be one or two organizations that will be true. And then the other thing, if you could just reach out, do this information interviewing, networking that we talked about with some people that have landed in companies and get their perspective on things, including you could ask them that question. They may be able to say, "Oh no, hell no! I know somebody that's 45 that's recently got hired." So it would just be a tactical thing to kind of help you do a little bit more research, and you have an assumption, and there may be a certain amount of validity, but I would almost guarantee you there's some companies, some good tech companies in the Bay Area where that would not be the case.
Okay.
Maureen, you had something? Go ahead.
Absolutely, yes. So first of all, Natasha, please, this is going to happen to all of us throughout our entire career. And what I'd like you to do is flip it over. So imagine if you're an interior designer and you walk into a house and they have a pink carpet.
Mhm.
You either remove the carpet or you do the entire room according to the pink carpet. So I want you to change perspective. So you know the saying, you get what you pay for?
Mhm.
If you're
Yeah.
quality, you're going to get a higher price.
Okay.
Walk in with, your quality, you have wisdom. The people who are brand new graduates might be chosen because they will take less of a pay, but you have experience. So I would like you to take a moment and just look into even the interviewer's eyes and say, so, a lot of newbies live on trial and error, where in my case, I will reduce your errors to help you be more successful faster. And then flip topics again and say, so when it comes to liquor, do you buy the fresh or would you like aged? Do you like a Johnny Walker Red or Black Label? Because everything gets better with age.
Yeah.
So if they want quality, they want finesse, they want you. And you walk in that this is not a disadvantage. You have the dilettantes and the rookies just leaps and bounds ahead of them because you taught them.
Mhm.
So you have the upper hand. So come in with, what? So what? So you're hiring rookies? Please, when you pay for their mistakes, come and talk to me. And you flip it. You walk in with so much confidence, they'll be like, really, seriously, we can't not have her here because she'll solve it for us.
Mhm.
And then your age is your advantage.
Mhm.
And the difference here is information, which is what the brand new graduates have, is transformed by experience into wisdom, which is what you have.
Okay.
And then there's no disadvantage.
Okay, and there's
you.
two other people with their hands raised, but I do want to make one comment. I have heard that job ads often is a wish list. And it's what they wish to have, not necessarily what they're going to end up having. So I think, again, what Maureen's suggestions are very good. You walk in there with the most positive attitude that they're going to want you. So next is Lauren. Lauren, why don't you ask your question?
Hello, I'm sorry, I had to end up joining from my phone. My audio on my computer was not working very well today, which I will get fixed soon. So thank you all for this workshop. This has been really, it's been really helpful. I have a really, I feel like this almost sounds like the most basic question ever, but when you reach out to someone for an informational interview, I mean, do you just say that? Like, just say like, hi, my name is, I'm really interested in working in your field and would like to have would like to see if to set up an informational interview to discuss it. Like, I mean, is it, and then how much are you revealing about the fact that we're making a transition into this industry and not, having years of experience doing that particular thing? Of course, I understand parlaying what we do into how that applies there, but I guess I'm just sort of like the nitty-gritty details of setting those things up is I'm interested in.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm going to have Steve answer you, but again, this is something that's known in business, that you can contact somebody and ask them if you can sit for, 30 minutes to talk about their job. And one of the things that Maureen suggested is see if you can get an introduction. And that is one of the things that I do for my clients, is that I find somebody in a business in my networks that can introduce them. And so then that kind of paves things over. Anyway, go ahead, Steve.
So I wouldn't use the term informational interview, because it's not a universally understood term. I think it can be very effective to be completely transparent and, hi, my name is Laura McLean, and tell them how you came across them, their information, real briefly, whatever your particular circumstances are, or I'm interested in pursuing a career in, whatever it is they're in. And I would really appreciate it if you could, if I could spend, 30 minutes, I'd give them kind of the time block so they're clear, and just ask you about your job and what you do, because I'm trying to figure out my next career move, and it would be very helpful to me.
Yeah.
And most people are going to go, yeah, great. People, as long as you're sincere and they're not getting a read that you're trying to, sell them something. I mean, Gina's already made the point. Don't try to do that as a backdoor ask for a job. It could well fall into your lap if you have a good conversation and they say, well, Laura, I've told you a little bit about what I do. Tell me a little bit more about you. And then they go, well, I think that, there might be something here that could well be, you might well be a really good fit for, or it may not. So Laura, does that answer your question? I think Maureen's got something to add.
Yeah, I think it does.
We don't know what the company is doing behind the scenes. We don't know who they're happy with. We don't know who they'd love to fire. So if you show up and just show genuine interest, exactly how Steve is saying, they can in their mind be like, oh man, I can finally get rid of that headache because she's perfect for the job. And you just showed interest. So toss the dice. And basically, once you decide on what you'd like to be, tell everybody in your life. Because you don't know who they know, and maybe conversations just happen, and they'll be like, wait a second, my friend has or is looking for, and there you go.
Yeah, it really is that easy. You just contact somebody and ask. All right, Virginia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for this panel. It's been really great. My current concern that I'm bringing to everyone is about to decide between pursuing academia and then pursuing non-academia. I'm currently a second year, about to be a third year in graduate school. And around year 4, year 3.5 is when ideally I would be going on the market. And so one of the things I'm taking away from our conversation, right, is how do we market the skills we have to show the results to, whoever we're bringing it to. And one of the things that I am passionate about is project management. And I'm considering getting my PMP certification to also balance this academic, non-academic life that I'm still deciding between. And one of the questions I have is, how do you know when adding another certification, it will truly benefit you, or if it won't? It does, there are significant costs that come with it, but also recognizing that becoming a PMP does put you in a lot of unique circles that you otherwise wouldn't have access to if you didn't have that certification. And I'm also mindful that Black women just continue to add certifications onto them without necessarily being well paid for having those certifications. Part of it, yes, is not being able to market yourself properly, but also people taking advantage of the skills you're bringing to the table. So if you have any thoughts on that, please feel free. I'm open to all suggestions.
Yeah, there were
So
people,
I had a,
there were people in the discussion about this event that wanted to know about project management. And I said, I'm going to have a project manager, former project manager here. And so that's Steve. So Steve, tell us all about project management.
so the PMP is a good certification. Now, there are people that go nuts on certification, right? But it's one, it gives you a common vocabulary across lots of different types of projects, and it's very widely recognized. And there's a core set of skills that it really gets you up to speed on. Now, the flip side of that is I've hired people as project managers who didn't have PMPs. I ended up running them through the PMP training. And I'd interview people who have PMPs who I wouldn't have hired on a bet. So having a certification in and of itself doesn't mean you're qualified, but it's a good thing to do. So for that particular one, I had it for like 10 years. I don't have one anymore just because the required hours, like I can't remember, but anyway, at a certain point, it just wasn't worth it to me to keep getting the training hours in. But I can recommend that one specifically.
Go ahead, Maureen.
2 points. First of all, when it comes to pay, there was a research project where they actually checked with men and women, because men usually get more salary for the same job. You know why women don't get the same salary? Because they don't ask.
Yep.
So each and every time internally, when you feel that you're asking, and we all have this, we feel like we hit the wall with, that's enough, I can't go past it. Love yourself enough to take one more step. Love yourself enough to be bold and ask. Because this is how I see it. If I don't ask, it's 100% no. But if I ask, I've upped my chance of a yes 50%. And sometimes they will actually respect you more because you were bold enough, gutsy enough, defiant enough to ask. And come from the space. Now, the other thing also, because a lot of people in academia have what we call analysis paralysis, where the studying is your world. But trust me, I'm with you there, okay? Because I'd much rather be in a book. But we have to live in real life. So I want you to be aware where the line in the sand is. And if adding certifications now is just keeping you in the protected world of academia versus facing reality and then adding them later. So come from a space where you just take a long, hard look at yourself, because we hate the unknown. And if the unknown is forced upon us because of life, we'd really dislike it even more. So be in a space where you're gutsy. So what's the worst that can happen? They say no. And if they say no, what happens? You're exactly where you are today. You've lost nothing. So be gutsy, be bold, be defiant, ask the unaskable questions, and you'll surprise yourself with how many yeses you'll get.
Okay.
Thank you both.
Thank you so much. Are there any more questions? Because we are kind of at the hour, or probably a little beyond an hour, but that's okay, because questions are important. I would like to thank everyone for coming. I would like to thank you for being so engaged and active in this conversation. I would like to thank Steve and Maureen for agreeing to be panelists. This is just wonderful. Yes, let's applaud. Yay. And this presentation will have a new life on YouTube. And I really hope that everybody goes on with the rest of their Tuesday happy, engaged, and inspired. So we'll all say goodbye and see you all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
academically.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.